Welcome in, everyone, to a 55th edition of Miami Hurricanes live here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. If you love Miami football and you have not subscribed to the channel, this is the deal. Each and every week, we send out a notification that you get if you're a subscriber and you know when the live streams are coming, because otherwise you won't, because we've got a number of schedules involved, and therefore we cannot provide our live stream at the same time each and every week. Case in point this week. So for a number of months, as you can see, we've been doing this for over a year. That's 55 weeks, 52 weeks in a year. For 1 year and 3 weeks, we have been consistent in providing a Miami Hurricanes live show each and every week. And I believe last week we actually did 2 shows, even despite the lack of news, even despite the offseason being what it is and the spring practice being canceled after, I believe, 5 sessions. We did go live with Miami Hurricane Talk last week for a 54th time. This is number 55. All right, so subscribe to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Therefore, you turn on the bell for the notifications, and if you love Miami football talk, you get it at least minimum once a week for a full hour with Cam Underwood from State of the U, or from the Wholesome One here on YouTube. Today, you get it from myself, it appears. I believe Cam and I miscommunicated. That would be my fault. And therefore, we're still going live with the show because Cam had thrown out a few days over the weekend that he would be available. One was Saturday. I said, sounds great. Let's do it at the same time that we did it last week, Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I thought we were all set. That was my fault. Cam did not respond or confirm. And I sent out the link to him about 15 minutes ago. So I believe there's no Cam today. You're going to have to put up with me. We can talk whatever we would. And I'll let you know that prior to coming on here live, I looked through, starting about 45 minutes ago, I went through at least 20 recent Miami videos to find some questions for Cam, and didn't really find anything because obviously most of the questions come via the live chat while we're on here live. And what I would ask you guys to do is, because obviously we run out of time at the end of the hour, and there's probably at least 10 to 15 to 20 questions, something in that range, that are really excellent questions or comments to respond to that we're not able to get to because of the time limitations. Therefore, those I could go back in the live chat and try to find and run through, but they're almost impossible and just basically a waste of time to try to find. So if you have a question or comment that you would like to get answered, and we just don't have enough time for it during the live stream, if you could just copy and paste that comment or question, send it to one of the videos, one of the Miami videos. I will be sure to pick it up for my next conversation with Cam or with a Wholesome One. All right, I needed a backup today. The phone lines will be open, and I will let you know what we were going to discuss, if nothing else. Of course, you guys were going to have recruiting questions, I'm sure, because that's always at the top of everybody's minds. I saw this question asked on Twitter earlier today, just as I woke up, which wasn't really that long ago. Who was one player, who was one athlete who deserved a ring? Obviously, there are rings for conference championships and rings for division championships and so forth, but we mean the ring, Super Bowl championship, World Series championship, national championship, NBA championship, etc., Stanley Cup. Who is the one athlete? Who was the one athlete who deserved a ring and did not get one? I quickly thought of Kenny Lofton, Ken Griffey Jr., Fran Tarkenton, Mark Price came to mind. Jim Thome, Omar Vizquel, Ernie Banks. So those guys came to mind. Don Mattingly came to mind. So I was going to post a Cam, and you guys can certainly throw out your answers. What Miami Hurricane most deserved a national championship ring and did not get one. Or if you had the power to go back in time, even if they weren't the most deserving, if you had the power to go back in time and award a national championship ring to a Miami Hurricane who deserved one, or you just would like to have seen win one, who would that have been? I was going to ask Cam as well, who was the one recruit, since he is just ingrained in recruiting like nobody else that I know, certainly who is not earning their first and primary salary from following recruiting. He knows more than anyone. Who's the one guy that got away? Now, I'm not talking about the best player in the country who somehow obviously wasn't going to go to Miami that you would like to have had. I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the guy who was seriously considering Miami who got away. Who is the most important, the most excruciating, looking back at their career, the one that got away? Whether it in the moment it felt like this is the one that got away and this is worse than any other, or this is the one that got away. In hindsight, I was going to ask him that, so you guys can fill in for me there. I've asked this question during a number of call-in shows in the past few weeks. Looking forward to the 2020 college football season, this is definitely hypothetical because none of us are God. What would you give up? What would you sacrifice? What would you pay to guarantee a college football season for 2020? But then looking back, it made me think, okay, why don't we pose the question and have the conversation? What have you given up? What have you sacrificed? What have you paid? What mountains have you moved? Shifts changed at work, whatever the case might be, to see whatever sporting event, whatever Miami Hurricanes game, whether that be in person or on the TV screen. What are the greatest lengths that you've gone to watch a Miami game? And again, I'll keep the phone lines open at 860-325-3687. I'll go through the live chat, and I wanted to go through the schedule as well, which of course begins with a fairly substantial game, certainly a challenge. Nothing close to what Miami faced 2 years ago in taking on LSU head-to-head, or Florida the last 2 years, so nothing close to those SEC powers, but a date that has to be taken seriously, September 5th against Temple. Although the Owls are coming off a 55-13 demolition against a team that's going to have this fan base's attention, I hope, this offseason going into September, and that would be the North Carolina Tar Heels. Mac Brown, Sam Howell, Bo Corrales, De'Ami Brown, and those guys. 860-325-3687. Of which, if I do receive a phone call, I'm going to have to make a few switches here. Eddie the Cane, good to see you. Are we doing this or what? Well, in a limited fashion, we are. We've had a mix-up of communication. Mr. HD's on the line. Bryant is on the line. We've got William. We've got a number of people that I haven't seen before. William Merriweather. Sup, everyone. Bryant, Rockwell. I've never seen your handle either on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So I hope you've subscribed. And because I've never seen you, you deserve and are owed the welcome, the big welcome. Well, the welcome can't be what it used to be because the set is extremely close now. But welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Obviously, you root for Miami. Would love to know how long you've been watching. Had somebody provide a donation, which was very kind, not mammoth, but very kind, through Venmo or PayPal late last night. Had never seen this gentleman's handle before. And so I asked him, who do you root for? How long how long have you been watching? Because many times, and I apologize for the speaking impairment right now. This is like for those of you who understand my work schedule. Therefore, even when I'm not working, my life schedule, 11 a.m. comes quickly for me because many times I'm in bed at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. That's when I get to bed. So I'm at my best. Many of you could probably look back those call-in shows late at night, those 10 p.m. call-in shows or midnight call-in shows. I'm ready to roll. Ready to roll. The words just fly off the tongue. But at 11 o'clock in the morning, not necessarily the best time for me. But anyway, who you root for, how long you've been watching, because I'm often surprised that I see somebody's handle for the very first time and bam, they've been watching for 2 years, but they just decided never to write in for whatever reason, which is fine. I appreciate those people that are the silent viewers out there that just want to kick back and listen and soak it in. But I'm often surprised when I see somebody's handle for the first time and I find out they've been watching for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Sometimes people speak up and they contribute, and all of a sudden, I find out they've only been watching for 3 days. They just found us. So would love to know, you guys, how long you've been watching and how you found me, because if I can determine how people find the channel, then we can make a better effort at getting people to the channel and building this out the way it needs to be built out. Crip, good to see you. 904 Hurricane, great contributor right there. Thank you, sir. Cuban Canes. I was fortunate enough to meet him in person. Butch Johnson. I've never seen your. Oh, okay. There's one of the more obvious answers, but a great answer. When I say obvious, I don't mean a bad answer. I mean Dan Marino, one of the greats of all time, of course, did not get a ring, came closest in his second season, losing to San Francisco at Stanford Stadium in the Super Bowl. Joe Montana and company, even though the Dolphins had a 14-2 record that year, they lost 38-16, just not a close game. Marino threw 1 touchdown. And at the time, he actually set the Super Bowl passing record for yardage in a game. Most of that, obviously, in garbage time, trying to play catch up. In terms of, we've got another vote for Marino from Crip, and Crip would have liked to have seen Brad Kaya, who was certainly a steady and consistent quarterback and a long tenured quarterback for Miami, who pretty much played all 4 seasons, basically 3.5, something in that range as the starter. Get him a ring. Played behind marginal offensive line play. Sigmund, good morning. Don't you really, Ed Reed will make a difference in this team and recruiting? Do I think? I believe that Ed Reed, and I cannot speak to the man's competency in regards to organization or knowing how to run a football operation or anything that he can provide or contribute there, but the man's sheer reputation as a football player and sheer presence and personality and magnitude was more than worth the hire. I believe that. Dalvin Cook? Possibly. Oh, Bryant, of course Tom Brady deserves another ring. Let's get him number 7 with Tampa Bay. Now, you talk about locking up a legacy that would be beyond anybody else in the history of the NFL. If it's one thing to win all those Super Bowls and appear in 9 of them with the same team, organization, system, and of course, head coach, who's one of the greats of all time. But then if you're able to leave that, go to another team, especially at his age, a team that's been downtrodden, and go and win a Super Bowl, I don't think any of us expected that. But if that would happen, I'm not a Tom Brady fan, but right now I consider him to be the most accomplished. And I hope you guys understand my take on this. The most accomplished quarterback of all time. I don't necessarily consider him to be the greatest, meaning the greatest just in sheer football playing on the field. Had other quarterbacks had more in place, similar to what Tom Brady had, and not the challenges that they had to endure. I believe that there have been better playing not many, just a few. There have been better quarterbacks on the field, but nobody's more accomplished. He passed Joe Montana a few years ago in regards to the most accomplished quarterback. And when I say accomplished, I'm combining statistics and winning. Warren Sapp and Sean Taylor, although that Maurice Claret play didn't help. Excellent answer there, Dante. Dante, of course, joins us on a regular basis. Appreciate the contribution. Good to see you, Dante. Warren Sapp, yeah, in those early to mid-90s. So Miami, of course, won its last national championship during that era in 1991. The split national championship with Washington. Could have won one the next season, but lost to Alabama in surprising fashion as a 10 or 12 or 13-point favorite in the Sugar Bowl, and lost 34-13 to Gene Stallings and company. Jay Barker at quarterback. And then, of course, in 1994, after getting drubbed in the Fiesta Bowl by Teddy Bruschi and Arizona the previous season, 29-0. Then in 1994, looked primed to win another national championship at the Orange Bowl against Nebraska, a team and obviously a program that they had beaten up and bullied around and just be totally outclassed a number of times prior to that in recent years at the Orange Bowl. But Nebraska and Tom Osborne really showed his greatness, his resiliency in forming a passing attack. Not a great one, but one that could complement the power running at Nebraska just good enough to win a national championship and beat Miami 24-17. So those two gentlemen, and at that point, no, Warren Sapp was still on that team. Lamar Jackson. Well, he certainly has enough time to win a Super Bowl championship. Butch, if you're referring to college, Lamar Jackson obviously won a Heisman in 2017, was the starting quarterback for 3 years at Louisville. Didn't come anywhere close to winning a national championship in college, but he is your answer, apparently somebody that you would have wanted to win a national championship in college. That could not be further from the truth. Malik Rozier was one of the best things Miami ever had. There could be a fight or two that would break out after that comment has been posted. Lamar Jackson is actually the best quarterback in the NFL. There's an argument there, possibly. I would go although he's in slight decline right now, I would argue that over the last 10 years that Aaron Rodgers has generally been the best quarterback in the NFL, and Drew Brees has been right there as well as Tom Brady. I would not argue Brady right now. Pat Mahomes is right there, of course, as well. Vote for Pat Mahomes. Good to see Jordan Bowman, who joins us on a regular basis. Big Clemson fan, of course, as we can see right there, but still joins us for all the live streams. And you Miami fans and college football fans in general, remember that while we have 3 designated live streams each and every week dedicated to Miami, Florida State, and Ohio State, the Florida State one is the only one that we can set a specific time for each and every week. So Miami fans, if you want to come to the Florida State live stream and cause a ruckus, if I'm dating myself with some 1950s verbiage, cause a ruckus, cause a disturbance in the live chat, then join us on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. That's every Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Time for Florida State Talk. And if you're just joining us, unfortunately, Cam Underwood and I had a miscommunication of sorts. Blame it on me. And this is our Miami football talk for a Saturday morning. I've got a conference call at work at noon, so I won't be able to stay on here too long. Lamar Jackson embarrassed in the playoffs twice. Let's consider that the first time was as a rookie starting quarterback. And there's a lot of football out ahead of him. Barring injury, a lot of football for Lamar Jackson to make up for those 2 playoff losses. There's a number of elite quarterbacks down through history who won championships, performed well in the playoffs, whose postseason careers did not start out well. Peyton Manning comes to mind. Peyton Manning's first few starts in the playoffs were not pretty. The best quarterback in the NFL isn't either one of them. Personally, I would say Drew Brees is the best. He may be old for a quarterback, but he isn't dropping performance-wise yet. I've always been a Drew Brees fan. Always admired him. I don't really consider myself a fan of any particular player currently. I gave that up when I was a teenager or somebody in their 20s. So I'm not necessarily, do I consider myself a fan? I don't know who the last player would be that I would say I was a fan of them. When I was first a sports fan, that would be Reggie Jackson, Tony Dorsett, Danny White, a lot of other guys. For you baseball nuts, Toby Hara, Brooke Jacoby, 2 of my favorites. Anyway, so I'm not necessarily a fan of Drew Brees. I'm a fan. I'm an admirer of him as not just a football player, but as a person. He's a class individual. Just gave a substantial amount of money to the COVID-19 effort down in New Orleans, where, of course, they're having all sorts of serious issues. Drew Brees is the most accurate collegiate quarterback I've ever seen. I remember thinking many times watching Drew Brees carve up defenses in the Big Ten without NFL-type wide receivers and tight ends. He had one wide receiver, I believe that was Vinny Sutherland, who made an NFL roster, I believe with San Francisco, and played some substantial time and caught some passes. I'm sure a couple other guys made it to an NFL camp, but Drew Brees was not surrounded by talent at Purdue. And he took Purdue. Now, of course, we can credit a number of other players. They had a really good team. You cannot just have a great quarterback and make a Rose Bowl. But they tied for a Big Ten championship and went to the Rose Bowl. Purdue. They haven't come close to doing that, obviously, since Drew Brees left, nor did they come close to doing it prior to him being there going back to the late 70s. Jim Everett was a good quarterback at Purdue in the 80s, and they had some decent teams. But that's how good Drew Brees was, that I often sat there and watched him in college and thought, this guy is more accurate. He threads a needle because these kids downfield are not gaining separation. He is threading the needle. He is the most accurate collegiate quarterback I've ever seen. 904 Hurricane. Recently, I would have to mention Justin Flo, especially because we lack depth at the position. Of course, we could also go over the list of local talent Miami's consistently missed out on, that pertaining to the question that I asked. And we'll get Cam Underwood's thoughts and possibly the wholesome one in future weeks on who that big recruit was that Miami missed on, that they had a good shot at. Dante. Randy Shannon's 2011 recruiting class was going to change the game for Miami. Teddy Bridgewater, Louisville, Patrick Peterson, LSU, Kelvin Benjamin, Florida State, etc. would have got Miami back in the championship mix. The only question I have there, was Miami close to getting those players? Were they right there ready to get those players? Were all those players on the fence, and was Miami on the short list? Drew Brees' arm is shot. Well, I can guarantee that Drew Brees' arm is not what it was in his prime, but Drew Brees is not shot. Now, can that happen all of a sudden? Obviously, that can happen all of a sudden. With a guy like Peyton Manning, to watch Peyton Manning play his final season in Denver, even though they won a Super Bowl, and it was remarkable that he played as well as he did in the playoffs, not in the Super Bowl, didn't play great in the Super Bowl, but if you recall, Peyton Manning was at the top of his game, not at the top of his physical abilities, but at the top of his game going into that season. He had just thrown 55 touchdown passes 2 seasons earlier, and they were in prime position to go to a Super Bowl the previous season. But then, of course, he had the major injury concerning his back and his neck that was severe, that obviously cost him his career, but he was able to play out the rest of that season at least, come back, and even though he looked horrible, Peyton Manning did down the stretch of that 2015 season, he played extremely well, not to the Peyton Manning, vintage Peyton Manning of 2005, but played extremely well for him at that point in his career. If you look at the numbers against the Steelers and the Patriots in the playoffs and the championship game, Peyton Manning had 2 really good games. They put up a lot of points. They went to the Super Bowl. Then he relied on Von Miller and company to win him a ring. Thanks, William. Good to hear from you. Appreciate it. Clement's son, I'm ashamed to admit what I paid for 2 tickets to Clemson, Alabama in Tampa 2016. But it paid off, right? Clemson fan, it paid off with the national championship despite being down 14-0 and 2 remarkable drives led by Deshaun Watson and those talented wide receivers. Obviously, that was the game in which Hunter Renfrow made his name or cemented his place in college football history with the last-second catch to beat Bama. What I like to remind people about that game is that, especially Alabama fans, at the time in which they were calling for Tua Tagovailoa over Jalen Hurts, and certainly there's no comparison between those 2 players as passers. That's not what I'm saying. But people were diminishing Jalen Hurts' contribution to Alabama football and what he did. When Jalen Hurts walked off the field against Clemson in that national championship game in 2016, January 2017, the 2016 national championship game, he had just led a touchdown drive to take a 31-28 lead. He walked off the field with the lead, handed the lead to the defense, and never saw the ball again. So he cannot be faulted for that. It's like since we're talking a lot of NFL, consider this, that Kurt Warner, of course, won a Super Bowl championship in the MVP for the St. Louis Rams against the Tennessee Titans, one of the classic Super Bowls of all time, with the game going down to the final yard. I often ask this trivia question for Tennessee on the final play of that Super Bowl in 2000. Who threw the pass? Who caught the pass? Who made the tackle? That was an interview process at my work in which I asked that at one point. But anyway, consider that Kurt Warner won 1 Super Bowl. But in 2 other Super Bowls, he never had the opportunity to win the game. So against New England, he threw for 365 yards. Yes, he threw a pick 6. He threw for 365 and walked off the field having come back from 17-3 down to tie it at 17. Then he never saw the ball again. Tom Brady led the game-winning field goal drive. And then against the Pittsburgh Steelers, it was a remarkable season for the Cardinals. If you look at their game log from a 9-7 season, they looked dead in the water that year. I believe at one point they were 4-6. They make it to a Super Bowl, winning 3 playoff games, 2 of them on the road. Kurt Warner just lights it up, goes to the Super Bowl against Pittsburgh as a substantial underdog, throws for over 400 yards in that game. I believe something in that range. I believe set the, before Tom Brady broke it, set the Super Bowl passing mark. And threw the touchdown to Larry Fitzgerald with about a minute to play to take the lead, and walked off the field and never got it back. He got a Hail Mary back, but not a legitimate shot to win the game. So Kurt Warner could have won 3 Super Bowls very easily. And those are just some of the things that I bring up at times when people are making arguments about greatest teams and quarterbacks and making comparisons, and they just throw out the 3 Super Bowls versus 1. End of story. Well, that's not the end of the story because it's a team game. So let's put things into context. James Burgess Jr. and Eli Rogers were also Miami commits. The Punisher, Stephen Morris, was a good quarterback. I remember him well. Just a shame he was with MEH team. Yes, I actually met with him at the spring game last year. That was cool. Snake Spencer, 725. Obviously an Ohio State fan, but one of the couple handfuls of people that join me on just about every live stream. Snake Spencer, we love you. Good to see you. Tired of losing to Clemson. I can understand. Justin Fields as an added run option in last year's Ohio State team goes undefeated. Well, we can speculate on that. It didn't happen, but they certainly did go undefeated for 13 games, and Justin Fields was compromised. And once he was compromised about 3 to 4 games earlier, they were still good enough, of course, to beat really good teams like Wisconsin and Michigan and have a lead against Clemson. But Justin Fields was not the same quarterback for the final 3 to 4 or 5 games of the season last year. And then once J.K. Dobbins got hurt, then basically Ohio State became a drop back passing team in the second half. And Clemson won the game. Don Raymer asking about Jalen Phillips, who certainly showed in limited time at UCLA that he could be the kind of player that would deserve his 5-star ranking and live up to that. So Jalen Phillips was, by most services, the number 1 recruited player coming out of high school in what would have been, 2017, because he played the 2017 and 18 seasons for UCLA. I might be off slightly on that. I believe that he played parts of 2 seasons for UCLA. I've seen the kid play 4 or 5 times at least. And if you look at the numbers of disruptive plays, meaning tackles for loss and sacks, that Jalen Phillips racked up in that limited time frame, which means like 4 to 5 games, both of those seasons. I think he had a 4-game season and a 6-game season. That if you prorate those performances, yes, he was already making impact plays on a fairly consistent basis. And we know he's got the high ceiling. Yes. Clemson alum 98, thanks for pointing out. Yes, Hunter Renfrow did have a huge game in 2015. Yeah, I know he had 2 touchdowns, close to 100 yards. Yes. Yes. People don't know it, but Clemson alum 98, you can rest assured I'm well aware of that Hunter Renfrow actually had a bigger game in 2015 in the 45-40 loss in which Deshaun Watson had 478 yards of total offense, one of the great performances. And why I rated Deshaun Watson, check out the video. I rated my top 10 quarterbacks of the decade that we just completed, 2010 through 2019, rated Deshaun Watson as the greatest quarterback in the history, in the decade of the teens of the 21st century. Not going to go into personal conversations there. Don, good to see you. Anakin Skywalker, good to see you. Haven't seen you on the line for quite a while. Good to see you. Clemson alum 98. I know you don't like doing predictions this early, but an unofficial off the cuff 4-team playoff is what 4 teams mark. Want to underline something here? I'll answer your question, Clemson alum 98. I certainly love these kind of conversations, but make it very clear, yes, this is not the final prediction. That will come days before the season. There's a huge distinction in college football right now. I don't think there's any question that Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State are better than everybody else, with the caveat, hang on, Georgia and LSU fans, that you're right there. LSU, we need to see, was that a one-year deal for LSU? We know that LSU's loaded with talent. They have been, in losing 3 and 4 games each year under Les Miles after the 2011 BCS championship game. We know that LSU was fielding one of the more talented teams in the country year after year after year after year, and actually led the nation in the number of early entries into the NFL draft most of those seasons, but still went 8-4, 9-3, 8-4, 9-3 over and over and over. So who are they minus Joe Burrow and Joe Brady, who went to the Carolina Panthers? Miles Brennan could throw 40 touchdowns this year, and that's 20 less than Joe Burrow. Now, did Joe Burrow need to throw all those touchdown passes? Yeah, most of them were just in the process of annihilating teams. But Miles Brennan was a 4-star quarterback. I believe LSU is going to be prominent again, but they're obviously going to drop off to a certain extent. Even though we've got some LSU talk coming up on Sunday, in which I'm sure I'll be debated on that point. All right. So there's a distinction, I believe, between those 3. And I don't know if Georgia, with a new quarterback and Jamie Newman coming in, but their defense is going to be lights out, and LSU are there. And there's such a gap that next tier is really good. Penn State, Oregon, Michigan, Notre Dame, Florida. Maybe Florida breaks through. So I'm always looking for that next team. But think about the landscape of college football since the playoff. So we've seen 6 years under the playoff. And what have we seen? Ohio State is completely locked down the Big Ten. Yes, I know Michigan State won a Big Ten title in 2015 and made the playoff and lost by 38 points. Ohio State was by far the best team that year. Okay, Ohio State has locked down the Big Ten. Clemson has locked down after Florida State won the BCS in 2013, made it to the playoff in 14, was a really good competitor for Clemson in 15 and 16. Well, that's where obviously the transition happened and Clemson took over the ACC. So Clemson has the huge advantage right now of owning its conference more so than any team. Ohio State has owned it similar to Clemson, but they have some big challenges and have in Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan, maybe even Iowa on down the line. Clemson doesn't have those challengers right now. Is North Carolina one of those? Can they be that team? Possibly. So Clemson's almost just automatically in a playoff spot already, and I think that's a sad state of affairs for the ACC. but it's a great situation for Clemson. Now, the SEC, Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia. Wow. Oklahoma, Oregon. Oregon's obviously got to replace Justin Herbert, 4 offensive linemen off one of the best offensive lines in the country. Tyler Shook is probably going to be named as starting quarterback, but they really needed spring practice for that kid. Anthony Brown just transferred from BC, just announced a couple days ago, to Oregon. We discussed that, and that's going to post here in the next few hours. So here's my 4. Man, I would love to be novel and be able to say TCU's going to come out of nowhere and go to the playoff. I would love to be able to find that team. But it looks to me as though we're looking at Oregon is going to lose to Ohio State, most likely in the non-conference schedule. Therefore, they're not going to have any room for error, most likely in losing in the Pac-12. That puts them in a tough spot again, as they lost last season to Auburn in the first game of the season. Then they lost late to Arizona State, and it killed them. Oklahoma, I don't believe, has a tough non-conference game. Can't remember. Here you go. It's going to be Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia. There's my early call. Don't hold me to it. JT Sounds. Hey, Mark. Can De'Ara King have the same type of success and type of season like Justin Fields had at Ohio State? Well, if De'Ara King only throws 1 interception in 12 games, that would be phenomenal. So statistically, that's going to be difficult for him to accomplish that. But he's a similar player. I don't know where he was recruited in regards to rankings. Of course, Justin Fields, along with Trevor Lawrence, were the top 2 quarterbacks by far in that class. And Justin Fields is showing us why. I've seen De'Ara King play 3 or 4 times, probably in each season at Houston, in which he was the starter. He's a tremendous player. His performances against Power 5 teams was up and down. We reviewed that a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to say those are lofty expectations. De'Ara King, full season at Miami, 12 games, maybe 13 with a conference championship game and a bowl game, should throw for 3,200 to 3,500 yards, should run for 600 to 700, should rush for 10 touchdowns, maybe 12 touchdowns, should throw 32, 34, 35 touchdowns, but probably get picked off 8, 9 times. All right, everyone. I have to run. I've got a conference call. I appreciate you guys jumping online. I apologize for the mix-up and that we did not have the typical Miami Hurricanes live show. Please like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And by subscribing, of course, you get the notifications for the live shows. Next one's coming up 10 p.m. Sunday night, 10 o'clock Eastern time Sunday night call-in show, 6 o'clock with your favorite team on Monday at 6, favorite team, Miami fans, Notre Dame. And then your second favorite team on Tuesday night, Florida State at 7 o'clock. I appreciate the support, the contributions you guys make. And if you got any questions or comments that you left in the live chat that you would like to pass on to myself and Cam Underwood, just copy and paste them, leave them in the comment section of any of the videos. And folks, please do all the good things to help us. Subscribe. You do any shopping, or anybody in the household does the shopping, somebody does, in regards to online, please shop Amazon and use the link in the description section of any of the videos, and you help us build the channel. We appreciate it. We will see all of you soon. We've got our schedule previews and record projections coming out each and every day, and some other interesting debates and discussions concerning college football, talent, and a new conference realignment that I'll be sending out very soon right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.